Hello, assalamu alaikum. Good morning, good afternoon. I say good evening also. Okay. Okay. We welcome you all. And by God's grace, we are going to start on time. And I think many of us already we have quite a lot of info about Prof. There's a few new faces. In the interest of time, I hope you have read the brief profile of Prof that we shared, the screen that we shared earlier. So without wasting much of our time, I would like to call upon Prof. To start the session for us. We are going to start in the name of Allah, in the name of God, in the name of whatever we believe. So we hope to have to start well and then end well. So Prof. Hello, Prof.
Hello.
Yeah, Prof. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Anyway, again, thank you very much, Dr. Muntaka. I also like to express my gratitude to the organizers of this, series, and then also the Ghanaian community for organizing this, especially the students, and then all my colleagues and friends. You are most welcome to another topic. And then here, like you were informed, we are talking about if, let's say, we have conducted our research and we want to publish it or publicize it in a scientific way, what are the norms that we have to go through? So for the first part of this presentation will be just the remedies for paper rejection. Now, this will be the outline. I will not be able to finish today. That is why it's part one. So we will walk you through all these levels. The first thing we should have to ask ourselves is, what is a scientific paper? That is very critical and crucial. So actually, scientific paper is just a scholarly report, and it generally describes the original results of your research work. That is all that a scientific, a paper is about, but it must be original. And of course, it must be scholarly. And then the next point that maybe we will have to ask ourselves will be, will you really get your paper or your research output published in a very high reputable journal or a high quality journal? This is very, very important. And I must make it clear that never waste your time and energy, resources doing a research, and at the end of the day, you publish in a low quality journal or a journal without credibility. I think that is just a waste of time and resources. And then here, what we will have to look for is that for you to get your paper published in reputable journals, it depends. One will be, it depends on this, whether you have followed the scientific norm or not. I have talked a lot about this in our previous meetings, so I'm not going to repeat. So if you, just to remind you, when we talk about the scientific norms, they start from where you make an observation. You have a curious mind until you generate your data, and then you conclude. So that will be the norm. So you have to go through certain steps. Now, once you are able to go through that, then we will have to question the quality of your research, and you can only do that by following the scientific norms. Now, it doesn't stop there. Maybe your data may be very good, but the way you write it or the way you put the paper, the documents together or your data together will tell us whether it is scholarly or not. So here we are talking about high quality paper. Now, what are the qualities that we are looking for in a scholarly paper? One, Definitely the work must be scientific. It must have some scientific merit. Originality must be there. And we don't do a research, or we don't want to publish a paper for fun. We would like to publish the paper for that, so that it can be useful to, to community, or it can be applicable. And definitely it must be timely. We don't want to be reading outdated or obsolete information. And then we also have to comply. Compliance here will mean that ethical issues, policies, and all kind of things, political sentiment, biases, and all this, we will have to check these kind of things in scholarly papers. And then we always communicate in the language. So the language must be simple, clear, concise, and straightforward. And of course, you have hypothesized, you had a curious mind, and then you found some sort of intuition in you, and you wanted to test your hypothesis. So at the end of the day, you are going to conclude whether you achieve your point or not. So we want the validity of your conclusions. And certainly for you to have a valid conclusion, then you must adhere to instructions depending on the type of paper you are publishing and which journal you are going to publish your work. Then you will have to follow those kind of instructions, right? It's not about you, it's about them. So now, if that is the case, the next question that we will have to ask ourselves will be, how do we write a high quality paper of scientific merit? This is crucial. And again, it's very, very essential that we need to go into this. So what we can say is that for you to do that, it calls for a research project. And it could be or a research project title that is very good. And then what do I mean by here? For you to do this, you have to recapitulate the kind of thinking that you have to go through. It takes a lot of thinking. So right from the conceptualization of your work until it is published. So if you could remember, we did talk about analytical thinking, critical thinking, concrete thinking, convergent thinking, and we are also talking about divergent thinking. All these kind of thinking will have to go through your paper for you to make an impact. And definitely we will also want to see whether you have some abstract thinking, because if you don't have abstract thinking, how do you even condense your paper into an abstract? And then we are also talking about creative thinking. You will have your data, or before you generate your data, you must have some creativity so that you can think out of the box, holistic. How do you bring all your thoughts together? And then how do you conceptualize, even if you want to write the paper? And then how will be the flow of your paper? This is what we call sequential thinking. So all these things will have to come in. And definitely when you do this, then you are going through the scientific norm. But this scientific norm that you see, step 1 to 6, also will have its own challenges. And this is why the quality of your work is very important. So it's not straightforward like you ask a question until you come to conclusion. You might have problems along the line, but how you navigate the problems and come out with a quality paper, that is what we are talking about now. So if that is the case, the next question that we also will have to ask ourselves will be, how do we get a good research project? Because at the end of the day, you have to get a good research project or a good topic. From there, then you translate your output into a research paper for publisher, for you to publish that kind of information. Now, for you to do that, you need to have a curious mind. So we need to be a little bit curious. You must have some premonition or intuition to come out with something extraordinary or something that is not obvious. And sometimes you might get the research or the topic from what we call spin-off project or research. And this one takes a lot of experience in. You do a number of research, and as you move along, you will be having some tentacles or branches. Even a PhD candidate or master's candidate or postdoc or whatever, from your own experience, your outcome will tell you which will be your next directions or whatever. This is why postdoc is very important for you, because master's and PhD will just be you are doing guided research. And when you get to postdoc, you have the opportunity to explore so many things that you couldn't do. So that could be another example. Of course, if you're well-established a researcher, you understand what I'm trying to say. And definitely you will also get good topics from what we call professional services. If you've done a lot of consultations, community services, or all sorts of things, then from there you are likely to get experiences from that angle. and then you should be able to formulate good research, and then should be able to write some papers. Now, you see that I didn't start with the literature, because that is very traditional and that is very common. And when we say literature, literature does not only mean reading books, texts, journals and whatever. Literature can even be authorities that you are consulting. So these are some of the things. And sometimes also we can get a good topic and write good paper based on unexpected events. And a very good example now is COVID-19, where all of a sudden, out of the blue, we got all this virus threatening our lives. And you see how it has spun off a lot of research, stimulating the thoughts of people to do research. Or those of you who are familiar with what we call it, tsunamis and tornadoes and all sorts of bushfires, all these things will stimulate thoughts and bring out research components that we need to go into and publish. Of course, intellectual discussion with authorities. Authorities mean those who are well established, who is who in the subject area, specialists. All of them can help. And don't discount your own colleagues. Within your colleagues also, you can formulate a group research, or you can exchange ideas, and you should be able to run through. Of course, scholarly meetings, being them formal or informal meetings, conferences, exhibitions, seminars, workshop, write shop, all these, avenues, you should put your mind closely and try to look for those kind of information that you'll be able to write on. And definitely we are talking about local and international collaborations. If you are involved in this kind of research, you will see that transboundary research or transdisciplinary research, you can involve yourself and get yourself into the academic realm through writing papers. Now, the next thing that I would like to talk about with, now, if we are talking about all these things, then you have established your research and then you have the data. Now, why is it necessary that you should publish your work? That will be the next question. For me, this subject is very, topic is very subjective, but I'm just telling you what the the scientific community had agreed on. So here, the first thing will be, there are so many competing interests that you might want to go into that. But as an academician, I would say that your basic aim will be that you are trying to, what we call it, communicate or disseminate the quality of your work in terms of research to those who are interested. So that could be the first thing. It could be your peers within your group, or it could be outside your group. It could even be international, right? And the most important part, and the reason why we publish our work, is just because we want people to be aware of your new knowledge that you are offering. You have come out with a new knowledge, you have come out with a new understanding, so that we could advance knowledge through what? Application of your contribution. I think, in my perspective, this is the key aspect that we should be looking for. Of course, at the end of the day, it comes with some sort of fringe benefits, which could be recognition. But I believe that any serious academician would not publish because you want recognition. Of course, you may need it for promotion and whatever, but the fundamental thing is, if you have science and research in your mind, then you are talking about contributing to knowledge. Of course, others might have other reasons or whatever, but for me, I think the first two will be the most important reasons why we should communicate our research work. Now, before we start writing, perhaps we may want to look into these basic things, very, very basic, before you start writing any scientific work. One is where to publish your work. Extremely important. Audience, I will really want to say that it's very, very important that you take this aspect seriously, because now we have a lot of predatory journals here and there. Don't waste your time. So what you can do is, I'm reminding all of us, we will have to publish in very reputable journals. This should be your standard. Yes, when you start, it might be difficult. It's like a Herculean task or whatever, but just start from that angle, because there's no point you publish your work and you don't have wider readership and you are not making any impact. It just become like an academic exercise. I don't think that that would be the way to go forward, right? So that being the case, What are the reputable journals? All of you, we should know. So this is why it is very, very important that you look for genuine journals. Why you have to look for them? Because the genuine papers, what they do is when you submit your paper, they will definitely scrutinize your paper by looking at the rationale of your work. Now, this rationale should come in a form of justification. They will scrutinize you to that level. Because of this, they will look for, if you have the rationale, have you provided enough scientific data for you to back your claims? So this is why you have to look for genuine papers. Later, I'll be telling you about the reputable journals. Now, these reputable journals also, they will look for novelty. That is the key. Non-obviousness means that you come out with a topic and you research it that maybe even your peers in your group, in your research field, they never thought about this kind of area. So that makes it very unique and novel. But if you come out with a topic that it is very obvious, we know the outcome is very common, that means that the chances of you getting your paper into this kind of reputable journals will be very, very low, if not being whatever rejected. This is why when you are novel, you come out with something outstanding or something unique, even how small it is, it must be original. So this is where originality comes in, right? Now, moving from there, originality alone also is not enough. We also have to look at the relevance of your work. Extremely important. And then, is it really current? Is it really timely? You can imagine COVID-19. Now the race is to come out with a vaccine. If after 10 years we've already got the vaccine and you are still rushing to come, maybe your work is good, but it might not be competitive, or maybe it's irrelevant unless you prove it otherwise. So that is why your work must be in the limelight the time that it is necessary. And that will also show the significance of your work and the impact. You can imagine the one who will get the vaccine for COVID-19. You can imagine the impact. So those are the realities that we'll be facing along the journey as your paper is being previewed. Right. So here, for you to really avoid rejection of your paper in a reputable or credible journals, therefore, I will suggest that you need to avoid obsolete work. If your work has no novelty, forget about it. Originality is not there. There's no significance. I really doubt you might not get your work through any impactful journal. If you want to waste your time and go for predatory journals or bogus journals, that is fine. But I can assure you that you are going nowhere. Right. Now, we will also look at the technical aspect of the work, the intellectual flaws. They are not only going to look at the positive aspect. Remember, the moment you submit your paper, the scrutiny starts from the negative angle because they want to punch a hole in your paper. So they will want to look at the intellectual flaws, being them your assumptions, your questions, your hypotheses, how valid they are, the approach, the way you tally your conclusions with your objectives. So all these things will be scrutinized, and then we try to find some flaws. Of course, it's not only the negative, sometimes also to help to improve because you have something very credible that is worthy. And because of this, these are some of the things that you have to watch out for. Your paper will be subjected. You have stated your objectives. So we look at the relationship between your objectives and your conclusions, because at the end of the day, you are in point A and you want to move to point B. Point A is your objective and point B will be your conclusion. So we need to see, we cannot just give an objective and conclude in a different way. Total rejection, outright. And then we will also look at the validity of your questions. You see, the point here is, if you do a research and you don't ask the right questions, you will never get the right answers. So this is why we will have to scrutinize your questions and see whether they are relevant, they are valid or not. And of course, they must be in relationship with your what? Hypothesis, your assumptions. If you build your case on wrong assumptions, definitely your work will be flawed. So these are the things that could lead to rejection of your paper. And then we also have to look at what is the validity of your methodology. You see, if you come out and tell us that you have got a vaccine now for COVID-19, it's not only the output that we will look for. We will look at the credibility of your approach. So if your approach is based on false methodology, then forget about it. And sometimes also, statistically, we will have to subject your work to what we call experimental errors and see your sample size, the sample material, all these things will have to be looked into. And then, of course, if you are saying that your COVID, this vaccine will be, can be used to treat this, virus, is it only for a particular region or a particular race or a special niche? So we will have to see. This is why your sample must represent your population. Now, we will also want to look at the way you write your abstract, the discrepancy between your abstract and the full paper. Maybe the abstract that you are given, remember the abstract is the first point of call. So maybe we read your abstract and when we go and then look at the full paper, there's nothing, they are not related. Then I think we will not want to proceed. And also, of course, you are going to interpret your results. So we would like to see, are you really interpreting the result that you are having, or you are interpreting somebody's whatever? Or sometimes you have the results, you never interpreted them, or you are bringing new information, you plug them from out of the blue. So all these things will be checked. And as we start writing papers later in my series, I'm going to pull all these things for us to see. So what I'm trying to say here, I'm not talking about theory, I'm just laying the foundation. And at the end of the day also, remember, for indexing and then for retrieval of your work, we will also look at the appropriateness of your title, because a misleading title can never be accepted. So here, the title must reflect the content of your paper, or it must convey the research and what the research is about. In my next topic, we will take a whole lot of maybe 10 to 15 minutes to talk about only research titles and abstracts. So I wouldn't waste my time here. But what I would like to say is, if you don't want your paper to be rejected or delayed unnecessarily, then avoid giving misleading titles. I think next time I'll be able to show you what I mean by all this. But what you need to be careful, you need to be wary of is where we say misleading title, normally it does not set the limit of your study. This is where it's going to be too general and too broad, like the title of a textbook. So you need to be very specific and concise. We will talk about that. There are certain words you cannot use in the title. And then we also have to check. Remember, I just said relationship between your abstract and the full text. Now I'm talking about the component of the abstract, depending on the journal that you are writing to. Again, there are different formats and requirements, but the fundamental information that should be in any abstract could be that we want to check whether you have given enough information, very brief information about the background of the problem that you research in or you research into, and the problem itself, and what needed to be done, what you did, your objective, the procedure, the results, how you interpreted your results, and how you concluded, and the implications of your findings. This is the general component of any scientific abstract. But depending on the journal requirement or the journal format, some might not need the background. They might want you to go straight to the objectives. Some might even not want you to interpret your data. You just give the results, you conclude without any implication. But what I'm telling you now is just the general format. In my subsequent talk, I'm going to pull out all the types for you to see. Now, the next thing will be also, much as we don't want misleading title, we also don't want misleading abstract. So if possible, try to be very professional and try to be very direct, concise, and precise. Right, sorry. So what it means here is your abstract, as we are saying here, the results and conclusion of abstract must be the same and they must not change. The same does not mean word by word. The content must be the same. Otherwise, it's like you are giving us something else. The way you put in the language can be different anyway. So we will also check. Remember, in your paper, you have introduction section. So in the introduction section also, we check the appropriateness. And what aspect are we looking for when we talk about appropriateness? Again, remember, your introduction must be very comprehensive. Comprehensive, but it must be concise and straightforward. So here, where should it be? It should be on the background of the research. Here is more or less like you are extending your abstract. Sorry. There's a background, please. The difference between your introduction section and your abstract section is the components are almost the same, but here you are adding a few and then writing more. So background of your research, the research itself, what has been done, what has not been done, what needs to be done, why and why yours should be different, and with the hypothesis, the underlying hypothesis, the research questions, assumptions, and objectives, and the impact that you are going to make from your work. So these will be the major part of your introduction. Seriously, if you are talking about repeatable journals, these things might sound theoretical or very irrelevant, but these are the stages that will really pull you down. So please, with very passion, I think that we need to be very careful about it. So note these kind of things that I'm trying to say. One, avoid writing incomplete introduction. I think it will be very irritating and very unprofessional at this stage for somebody to tell you that you don't know how to write introduction of your paper. I think it is not really encouraging. So what we mean by a complete introduction must convey the importance of your research, as simple as that. That is all. So all what I've said previously will feature here. Now, coming down, remember, we will also have to check this, the appropriateness of the replication of, you see, some writers or some research scientists, they want to play smart. So every paper of yours, almost 80 to 90% will be repeated in terms of methodology. Copy the same methodology by giving different results and then try to publish. So we will look for this. Once it is detected, it is classified as what? Self-plagiarism. So once it comes this way, then definitely your paper will be rejected. Remember, every paper must have its unique way of establishing its own methodology. You can borrow some of the methodology from your previous papers, but it shouldn't be the bulk of the work. So this is very important, ladies and gentlemen. And then because of this, I'm giving you the solutions in terms of note. So here, the methodology should be very consistent with your current study. Very consistent. You can imagine you publish a paper 10 years ago and you are quoting the same methodology. That means that there is nothing new about your work. At least, step up your game. So here, example. What if there are newer techniques or technologies? So here, it's better you avoid outmoded or what you call it procedures unless otherwise, right? So then we will also have to check the results section. When we are checking, we check for completeness. And once you are leaving out important information in your work, which may be primary to your objectives or hypothesis, then definitely you are on your way for rejection. So please, it's very important that you start from important results. Very important to general, extremely important. So here also, I don't know why sometimes we, the scientists or researchers or writers, try to inflate your results. It's more or less like you are trying to make it, we feel that your research is a groundbreaking research. If it is not, please avoid exaggeration. This is where you are going to over-exaggerate and it is going to land you into rejection. And also, some of us could be so desperate and very unethical in a way that we inflate or we falsify or sometimes we fabricate. This should not be in any spirit of academia, because you see, inflated results, falsified or maybe fabricated results, you can never say you didn't know. It's intentional and it is not really allowed, and you will not be admitted into any reputable journal, and it could be detected. Now, the next part will be the logical interpretation or the discussion of your results. You don't just produce your results. Results is just what you have accumulated, you describe it. But when you are going to explain why, because, or whatever, then that is what we call interpretation. It might be consistent with others and it might not. You have to explain. And then also what we have to also understand is be focused. Be focused on exactly what you are producing and what you want to say, so that you can avoid illogical kind of discussion here and there. You will see later when we get into the writing stage. Because of this, you will have to subject your work before you start discussing your work. What are the scientific laws that your work will entail? Entail. Theories, are there any theories? Do you have principles, mechanism, concepts, assumptions, among others? So you should plug them in and then we see where you are. So these are the things that could really, really project your work. Can you imagine you write a research paper without hypothesis? It's like a driver without a license. So these are some of the things. So then we will also have to check the motive of your research. The motive of your research is where your hypothesis. Normally, when your hypothesis is not clear, or whether your scientific whatever motive is not valid, we will have to check this. Or the data does not really answer the question. You have generated the data. At the end of the day, you are not even able to tell us whether you have achieved your objectives or not. So all these things must be very clear. You don't write a paper for people to remind you this, your reviewers. No. And then here, note this. What we will be looking for is the disconnection of your ideas, the technical flow of your ideas. They are disjointed, they are disconnected. And then we will also try to advise that expansive content of your work will lead you to what? To lose your focus. So many things, too ambitious. You want to achieve so many things with so many hypotheses, so many questions. You will get lost. So avoid this expansive content of your work. Be very, very specific. Even if it's one objective, produce it very well and then let it be straightforward. But it must be technically sound. Now, much as you go through your work also, try as much as possible to train yourself, your mind and your own intuitions to avoid bias. Remember, there is a way to check bias. When you try to make your work look like it's extraordinary, it's very good, it's outstanding, and it is not, people are not dummies. We will know. You get what I'm saying? You are dealing with specialists in your area, so we will have to really understand this part. Extremely important. And then here also, if possible, avoid omitting important findings of your research work. And then also important findings of other researchers. I'm sorry, with due respect, not to elevate myself. Yesterday, I was in a Viva, a PhD Viva, and what happened was that there was this presentation on phosphorus and using something called biochar. We've done a lot of work and certain colleagues and whatever. To our surprise, there was not even a single citation and there was no any fractions and whatever. So the whole work became like it's hollow. So what I'm trying to tell you is don't undermine the pioneering work that are leading you. Otherwise, you might find yourself in a serious ditch. Now, you also have to note this, that we have to be very, very careful so that you don't be what? Overlooking the limitations of your research. So over this kind of, have a limitation, but also try to be very, very factual and precise in your thoughts. So here, if you try to overlook the limitations of your work, you will be subjected to a lot of bombardments here and there. So define your scope so that you are judged within the confines of your scope. Now, the next part will be, please, even if it's your own work that you are quoting and you quote your work verbatim, it is considered as self-plagiarism, not to talk less of somebody's work that you want to claim and you don't have credit for that person. So it's very important. That is why it is very important when you refer to others, you can paraphrase or put it the way you understand. Even you put it the way you understand in your own language, you still have to give credit to the source. Otherwise, you will find yourself in this kind of plagiarized system. Now we have a lot of journals who have their own software. It's very easy to detect plagiarism. So don't get yourself to this level. Once you plagiarize, your work will not even go beyond the editorial office. Right. Now here also, if we are asking a very simple, we are in a simple stage where you will have to look for this basic scientific research writing. Very, very basic things like this. One, have you really defined or have you identified your hypothesis? Please never write a paper without hypothesis. You will see until the end of this talk, hypothesis, hypothesis, hypothesis. And then have you even collected accurate data that will test your hypothesis or not? You can see, I've got a number of students, you ask them, why are you taking this variable? Why are you taking that variable? Oh, because my supervisor said I should take it. Oh, because I read certain papers and they take these variables. If they take these variables, are they really relevant, to your work or not? So we have to see the relevance, the connections. And then you also have to carry out appropriate statistical test. It's very, very shocking. I'm sorry, not every research might need statistics. But generally, if you want to estimate the credibility or the error level of your work, then you might have to back it with statistical information. So this is also very, very important. And then also, we will have to determine whether the data that you have generated and it support your hypothesis or not. Now, this is quite a little bit is subject, it's open for debate, but please don't get me wrong. What I'm trying to say here is when we say research only primary literature, my point here is the most important literature for your work. Don't look at it from when we say secondary and primary. Secondary and primary sources, they have their own place. But I'm talking about prioritize those kind of papers or literature that are relevant to your work. That is what I'm trying to say here. And also use only appropriate methods. Any method that does not add value to your work, I don't think you want to waste time because it might not give you the right information about your what? Your hypothesis. And also, if possible, ensure, if I were you, avoid old methods. Because there could be that there are new methods that are far, far better. You can imagine, I'm not sure how good your science is, but we measure things in concentration. Now we started with parts per million. People are talking about parts per billion. Let's say like they want to look at certain, what we call it, maybe like sugar level or maybe like potassium level in your blood. Now, if you use parts per million and somebody is using parts per trillion, you can imagine the level of precision. Parts per million and parts per trillion is just like you are comparing maybe like a Mercedes-Benz with an ordinary car. So these are some of the things that we need to be very, aware of. This is why we need to use powerful methods or instruments. In fact, during the discussion, we can talk about this. Why do you want to use very good instruments and methods? Because you want your work to be robust and valid. That's the fundamental things. Sometimes you might use a method that is not robust, that is not really strong. It doesn't make your work stand out outstanding. So then it will also lead you to what we call an inaccurate conclusion. But when you have very good data, you have instruments and methods to measure them, of course, you are going to make valid conclusions based on your assumptions. Otherwise, your assumptions and conclusion will not be supported with any credible data. Right. Now, for you to also back and then put your work in the limelight for people to see or your peers to see that you are up to standard, therefore you might need up-to-date references. So it will be very important that when, let's say, you have published a lot in your area and then you are writing a new paper and almost 50% of the paper is your own paper, I don't think no one is going to publish this kind of work. This is also self-plagiarism, and you are not trying to tell us what others are doing. You get what I'm saying? So this leads to what we call inbreeding. We don't want this kind of inbreeding work. Right, unless you claim you are the pioneer and the first to do everything, which might not be true. Right. So now, as we move on, I'm just telling you, I haven't got to the technical aspect yet. I'm just paving the way. So now remember that a good scientific paper, whether you like it or not, will go through peer review. And I'm talking about professional peer review. I'm not talking about all these bogus type of peer review. Otherwise, you are wasting your time. So what will be the peer review process? The peer review, please, the basic idea about peer review is just to scrutinize your paper to see whether your paper has some value or it has merit or it has some worthiness. If, let's say, there are minor flaws or whatever, or certain suggestions to make it very good or excellent, that is what we call peer review. So don't look at peer review to be very negative or whatever. No. If you're a sensitive person, you can never publish a paper, because each and every one of us along the journey of publishing your paper, you might get rejection, you might get contrary view, or all sorts of things. Therefore, we consider peer review to be a very, very important scientific process. Because your peer review paper will only be published in a reputable journal upon careful review. If it is not reviewed and guaranteed that the content is valid, no one in any a reputable journal will accept your paper. So this is the main idea behind a review paper. Now remember that reviewers are never against your work. Never. I'm talking about professional reviewers. They are never against your work. But what did they do? They are friendly. They are professionals who are expected to read carefully your work and see the value of your work and judge your work accordingly. So that is all that these reviewers will do for you. So it's not something that you should be personal about it. Because of this, what do they look for? They will definitely look at the intellectual merit of your work. They will look at it, being the topic, the subject matter, relevant or not relevant. And they will scrutinize your methodology. Once the methodology is flawed, is there a way that they can help? If it's mechanical flaw, there is nothing they can do. It's an outright rejection. And how did you really interpret your results? How are you communicating your work to other parts of the world for them to appreciate your findings? So these are the basic things that they are looking for. And then, of course, they will also look at the worthiness of your paper and how it contributes to the understanding or the advancement of knowledge in your field or the subject area. If you are contributing nothing, it's just like a repetition, reinventing the wheel. So these kind of things, no. So you must advance something, even if it's an iota of contribution. That is fine, so long as it has an impact and is original. So these fundamental things should not beat you when you are writing a paper. It doesn't end there. So now, where do we publish? That is very, very critical. I have been saying that go for reputable journals. So where are these reputable journals? The first thing you should do before you find the reputable journals is to match the subject of your paper with a journal in mind. Sometimes it's amazing, you do your research, you don't even have journals in mind. You just do, after you finish, you start thinking about where to publish. These are all kind of waste of time. It comes with proper planning, because certain journals will have their own requirements and standards. So these are very, very important things that we need to do. So as a student or whatever, a professional, these are the things that we need to look at. Of course, you need to look at the journal, whether you fall into the scope or not. That is very important. But I can't believe that you will be in your subject area and you don't know who is who in journals. That is really unacceptable. It means that your readership is very, very narrow. So because of this, I will advise that do not just publish your work. First, publish in reputable journals. Know who is who in your field, who is who journals. Very, very important, because that's the only time you are going to be recognized or whatever. Because of this, you need to avoid bogus journals. How do you avoid bogus journals? We have something called B list. B, he is a librarian who established, he blacklisted a whole lot of predatory journals. So they have listed them and we know them, and definitely you can go there. Once you see that this is listed in B list, you just forget about that journal. Don't waste your time there. And then the next one that you need to also look for is we have something called journal citation report. Every university in this country, in Malaysia in particular, will have this. I think that is a global phenomenon now. Every year, they will be publishing journals that are within that database. Once you drop out, that means that you have lost some credibility. So we call them JCR. And within the JCR, you can have what we call Science Citation Index. Those of you who are in the sciences, that is where you go. And Thomson is very well known. We can go there. We can also check Social Science Citation Index. So these are the credible things that you need to look for. And recently, we are also talking about Web of Science. Under Web of Science, you might also have what we call Science Citation Index. And of course, we are familiar with Scopus. So each and every aspect of the database that are credible, those are the ones that you need to focus. There are other databases that claim that they are credible for me, or other parts of the world, we don't recognize them. Now, once you get to that, you need to move to another scale. That scale is what we call imperfecta. I know some of us are against imperfecta or whatever. I'm just telling you the norm. It is up to you to accept or reject, but that is the order of the day. So this imperfecta, if you want us to discuss how it is calculated, we can talk about that later. But watch out for fake ones. There are so many of them. So if you want to know whether a journal has a fake imperfecta, I have already told you, go to Web of Science, Journal Citation Report, Science Citation Index, Social Science Citation Index. From there, we rate them. This is why we have what we call Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 ratings. If you can publish in these kind of journals, definitely you are contributing and you will be recognized. Now, it doesn't end there. Now we are moving to another scale. It's not only Q1 up to Q4. Within the Q1 itself, we want to know with the journals listed under Q1, how many of them in your area will be the top 1%. That is where we are now as far as UPM is concerned and other what we call a research, universities are concerned in Malaysia. And we are also will look for, even if you can't go to 1%, top 1%, what about top 10%? So you see how difficult it is becoming if you really want to publish in a reputable journal. Now, because of this, these reputable journals will always have reputable editorial board or editors or advisory boards, very, very renowned people who have accomplished and they are more into their reputation and not for money. These good journals also sometimes will have what we call reputable guest editors, especially when they want to publish what we call special editions or special issues. Then they will have this kind of guest editor. When they do this kind of thing, it means that they are looking for specific type of information. So if you don't follow this kind of specific type of information, your work would never be published. And if you are very good and you have published in this kind of reputable journals, once a while, you will get an email from these serious journals because of your contribution to a particular area. They will invite you to write a paper. But even that does not guarantee that the paper will be accepted. It will still be scrutinized. Now, but again, human frailty or human weaknesses can come, and I'm not saying that every editorial board or whatever editors will be very professional. Some can be very petty and some can be unprofessional, but very few of them. Now, these reputable journals will also have very good referees or reviewers. And here they try as much as possible to avoid bias, personal what you call issues. But again, as I tell you, human frailty is there. There will be nothing like 100% impartiality. But these reputable journals will blacklist any bad reviewer or referee. Sometimes when we say a bad reviewer, that will also mean that not only in terms of ethics, he couldn't show any good contribution to your work. It didn't show, that person did not show the control of his or her knowledge in that area. You will never be invited again because you are invited as an expert reference. So we don't want this kind of shadowing because you can mislead people. So of course, some reviewers can be very unethical also. We will talk about that later. And then authors are also assured. You could be assured of very valuable comment. To be very honest with you, when I was a student, I learned a lot from these kind of comments. Very, very professional and very, very good comments. Until today, we are learning. I'm still learning. Sometimes you send your paper, you never thought about the angle that somebody will raise. And then from there also, it helps you to gain knowledge and then gain another focus of scientific research to come out with new papers and the style of writing. Therefore, they care about the quality and the impact of your work. Now, they are also care about the readership of your paper, because sometimes your paper is just localized, it's just within a certain community, even within your country also is very, very localized. In that case, you might not get yourself into any international paper that is of high quality. So this is why sometimes they will refer your paper, they will decline your paper and say that send it to a country journal or a sub-regional or regional journal. But I think it doesn't mean your work is not good. If it's good, it can solve the problem of your country, it's okay, you publish. But that kind of international recognition will come later, right? Now, we are also talking about these journals. Generally, they try to be credible, they try to be very impartial. For them, monetary gain will not be their primary motive. Their primary motive is the quality and advancement of knowledge. But when you look at the Boas Journal, the primary motive is to make money. They don't even care about the content of your work. Now, here, definitely, they will check whether you like it or not, self-plagiarism or whatever, they will check. And then they will also not publish your work if they find out that you copied a number of areas. Maybe you publish one paper and then you copy a lot from that your paper and then reshuffle your paper and you want to publish. That one would never be accepted. It's an outright rejection. And then definitely they will also look for conflict of interest. We all know what is conflict of interest. We also will look for what we call gift authorship. Your friends, your colleagues, they have nothing to do with your work. They never contributed to the intellectual content of your work, and you just put in the name. These kind of things will be rejected. This is why now serious journals will tell you, if you list 5 people in your 5 authors in your work, each and every one of you will have to specify your contribution to the work, the section or whatever you contributed. So this is where we are going now. And then, of course, they will also check whether you have a credible affiliation or not, your organization. If you have no organization, then for you to publish your work will be very difficult, because we didn't know where you did your research, how credible it is. Did you do it in your room? We don't know. So these are some of the things. So don't take your affiliation for granted. It's very important. It's a requirement. And then they also check exact location. Where did you do the research? We in the sciences, let's say you did a field research. If you are in agriculture, you say you planted somewhere. They will have to see the coordinates, the map. They can Google it and then find out exactly, did you do it or not? So these are some of the things. And we also look at the time, the duration, and the relevance. So those of you who keep your work for the next 5 to 10 years, it might become obsolete. That is why when you are a student, as you are doing your research, it's good that you start publishing. You can segment them chapter by chapter. So otherwise, it's becoming irrelevant. Now, of course, like I said, they only check statistics. They also check about the uses and the misuses of your statistics. Example, do you even know the difference between one sample t-test, pair t-test, independent t-test? Because when you don't use them, your work becomes invalid. Of course, experimental design will be checked. How did you design your experiment in a way that you avoid bias, so that whatever you say is credible? That is what we call experimental design. And then, of course, your sampling techniques. Did you do random, systematic, cluster? How did you do it? So that your sample will represent your population, so that when we replicate your work, we will find similar, we will have similar findings. What are your experimental units or your experimental material? When we say experimental material, it can be a human being, it can be plant, it can be animal. Experimental unit is the group of one person that you are interviewing, can be experimental unit. A group of people that you are interviewing for your work will be experimental unit. So all these things, are they really representing your work or not? What about the other aspect of what? They are concerned about credibility of your data in terms of what? Precision. What kind of instrument did you use? What is the accuracy? What methodology? What is the accuracy? So all these things will be checked. And if we are talking about your methodology, can it be repeated? So the repeatability of your work is very important. And the other aspect is what you call reproducibility. Here we are talking about how your error margin. Some of you are used to 1%, 5% error. So how do we reproduce the work? Also is quite essential. And then, of course, they will definitely limit you on self-citation. Self-citation, I'm not saying you cannot cite yourself, but they will not allow you to even cite 3 or 4 or 5 papers of your own in a research paper. That is not really acceptable. A few will do. This is what I'm saying. So, and then the other aspect, the second point is excessive citation here means is very, strange. You make a statement and you cite almost 10 references. What are you trying to prove actually? Three references leading to that subject area, the current ones will always convey the message. So there is no need actually. If you cite too much, it means the area is saturated. So your work is irrelevant actually, right? So the next thing will be what we call secondary sources. Sometimes you cite your secondary sources to mean your primary source. That is wrong. A paper is published in maybe in the 1980s, and then you are trying to make it like you got the paper and maybe some aspect is published in 2020, and you are making it like that 1980 is the 2020. That is unethical. Go back to the source if that is what you want. So that is what I mean. And then referencing knowledge, which is difficult to be attributed. That is what I'm saying. Like now, we all know we will all know common knowledge. 1 + 1 is equal to 2. How can you really credit to anyone? It's not possible. So once you do this, we know that you are really not credible, and the content of your paper will not be accepted. And then multiple submission. I was giving a similar talk somewhere, and somebody asked me if I have a paper I want to graduate, and when I send it to one journal, it will take me another maybe 1 year for me to get a paper, and I need to graduate and then without paper I cannot graduate. So for me, I'll send to 3 or 4 journals. If one accept, then the rest I decline. If you do that, that is academic fraud. This is what you call intellectual dishonesty. You cannot send at the same time. This is what we call multiple submission. You have to send it to only one journal. You wait until the journal gives a verdict. Then you can send it to another. If the journal is delaying you, you have the right to withdraw by writing to them. You cannot withdraw without without notifying them. Otherwise, if they publish and you publish in another area, that will also be considered as unethical. Now, if you read these days, you can see that a lot of work have been pulled out from all these kind of multiple submission. Okay, so here, definitely similarity in submission is unethical and is considered cheating. And then what we call the logical presentation of your data, even the way you present your tables, your figures, the language you use, they are extremely important. Now, much as you know that the journals is reputable, or you looking for reputable journal, be very careful. Some journals also don't have reputable publishers. Therefore, you have to look for very credible publishers. We all know them. I'm not going to talk about them. So are they reputable? Are they money-oriented or not? All these things are important that you need to check. And when you do your research, I think this is more to the sciences. There is something that most students or researchers don't do. This is what we call uncertainty measurements. Now, let's say you have a pH meter, or you have an instrument that you are measuring 1,000 samples. How do we know? The first thing you will say is that you calibrate. Calibrate is just to check whether your machine or instrument is working. But if you don't have a certified reference sample, you might not know after 500 samples whether the readings that you are taking from your machine, are they really accurate or precise or not. This is why you need to add a known standard sample so that you will know whether you are deviating from your work or not. This is what we call reference sample. And once a while, you need to analyze your sample and see whether they are not working or working well. For example, if let's say you are working for almost 3 hours using a machine that is taking a measurement, and then there was some sort of fluctuation in the electricity, remember it's going to affect the reading of your machine. The only time you will be safe to check whether machine is accurate is not calibration. It is the certified sample that is going to help you, because you know the value. So once the value changes, you have to stop, recalibrate, and then use your machine. Very important. Also, this is the point. You have set out your hypothesis, and you don't even know whether you are committing type 1 or type 2 error. This is where your knowledge in statistics is very important. So let me test you. What do we mean by type 1 and type 2 error? Let's say you have generated a data like this. You have come out with products, and then you have product A, B, C. You've conducted your statistical analysis, and you run your statistical test. The AAA that you see, the science student will understand this. All that you are trying to say is there is no statistical difference between all the products, even though the means are different. So what you are telling us, the difference between, if we take example, that product B and product C, the difference is 6. So you are telling us that this error is just an experimental error. But actually that is not true. How can your research results, 50% of it, and you say it's not significant? So when there is, definitely there should have been a difference between product A and product B and C. For A and B, we can understand. So this difference, if it's due to mechanical error, this is where you lead to what we call type 2 error. When there is difference and you say there is no difference. So sorry, this is type 1 error. Type 2 error means there is no difference and you say there is difference. So this is why you should understand what we call type 1 and type 2 error. Now, if you don't have statistical background, how do you know? If I were to review this paper, I will completely reject the paper because it has already committed what we call type 1 error. There is difference and you say there is no difference. Type 2 error, sorry, it's type 2 error, right? So here, once you are also not aware of the state-of-the-art technologies, you can't collect any good data. So it's very, very important that we know this. Right. Now, here, maybe what I'm trying to say is, if you look at your references, if possible, avoid old references, but if the reference is relevant, then you don't have a choice, you will have to use it. Assuming it's relevant, there is no newness, there is no addition, that is fine. But when you are going for references also, organizations or websites or whatever, it's very important that you see whether they are credible or not. If they are credible, that will be fine. But as far as we are concerned, if it's really a technical paper, a reputable paper, I think you should limit this kind of textbook type of, citations, proceedings must be limited. Maybe technical reports, 1 or 2 will be okay. And then if possible also, there are certain journals, don't be worried, they will purposely reject your work because they want to establish that there are a number of papers have been rejected and they only publish a few, because this is part of the ratings. This sounds unethical, but we don't have a choice. They will do that. So when you see this kind of journal, they don't give you good, output or review, information, just ignore and go to another point. Now, also avoid journals that will encourage you to do self-citation, especially if you have published in your journals. Not good at all. They will be compelling you. Don't do that. You cite because it's relevant. And then sometimes they will promise you that they are going to publish within a week. There's no reputable journal that will publish your work within a week. In fact, when you submit, it goes to editorial decks. For them to even look at the format will take a weeks or whatever. So forget about that. And then avoid journals who are too aggressive in promotion. They will be bombarding you a lot, publishing there, you get this, you get this. Believe me or not, good journals will not be aggressive on you. Have you ever seen Nature, this journal called Nature? They don't come to you as an individual. So these are the things. And then also this, be careful. You will have dubious journals who will go and get people in authority in your area and then put them in the website and say that they are part of the editorial board. Sometimes it's not true. This is why you have to know who is who in your area in terms of journals. And then it's also very, very important that these bogus journals or predatory journals, they don't even check the content of your work. They just do like 1 or 2 ABCD kind of editing and then they publish. Forget it. And then they will also encourage you to submit as many papers as you want. No, credible, reputable journals will limit you, especially if your area is becoming saturated. They want diverse information to champion their cause. So those are the things. And then you need to also avoid dubious publishers. There are certain publishers, they don't exist at all. They are just here and there. If you have just recently, about 1 week or 3 days ago, a number of online open journals have disappeared because there's no database to archive them. So these are the realities, and they don't have recognized imperfect journal. Even if they have, is questionable. And then avoid journals who are at least your minimum standard of looking at a database of a journal should at least be Scopus. That should be your minimum standard. Depending on your area also, you should know credible indexing and abstracting databases. Like me, in my field, we have agriculture, we have FAO kind of databases, so we can rely on them. You have to know your area. Now, let's come to the substantial issue. Now here, what are we talking about? Will my paper get rejected or not? Yes, it may or may not. But we will start with the editorial issues. And if you cannot pass the editorial issues, forget about it. You have wasted your time and money. So here, they will look at first, I'm giving you this first, the weak side of humanity. Sometimes at the editorial level or at the review level, if you are not lucky, favoritism or partiality, depending on your origin, can lead to rejection of your paper. This is not very, very common, but it is possible. So that is, I brought this first just to stimulate your thoughts. It's not common, but it's possible. That is where human weaknesses will come in. But the key thing that I would like to stress here is your paper, when we say editorial level, we have 2 sections. We have the editorial office, where we have publishing officers. They just accept your paper. They try to check 1 by 1 whether you meet the checklist or not. They are not looking at the content. So such a situation should not beat you at all. The next stage will be when they see that you have passed the checklist, they will send your paper to the editorial board, the chief editor, just to look at your work. So here, if you cannot even upload your work very well, outright rejection, the next day you will see that your paper has been returned to you. Maybe it's not rejected, they ask you to go through the norms again. You are wasting time. Sometimes it could be sent back to you because of conflict of interest. You didn't declare. Certain journals are very critical about this, so you have to declare. Sometimes you forgot or you just careless and you didn't upload your cover letter, because the cover letter tells us the motivation and it will tell us what you did and the originality. And sometimes also just affiliation is not there properly written. Sometimes your paper had already been accepted at the galley proof level, a whole lot of sloppiness. So here it might not be rejected, but it will lead to time wasting, and then it will delay your work being published. And then here also, the next thing that will straightforward lead to rejection of your work will be because your abstract does not follow the journal format. As simple as that. We don't have time for these things. There are thousands and thousands of work that you are doing. And then failure to meet sometime deadline. You could be invited, or sometimes you have the reviewers have given you the deadline. If you cannot meet the deadline, write back to them to seek for what we call extension. But if you keep quiet, they will just decline your work, as simple as that. And then we will also talk out of scope. Maybe your work, you think your work is great. You didn't bother to read the scope of the journal and you just submitted like that. Then there will be outright rejection. Now also, example, let's say in my field, I come out with a paper and I want to publish in Natural Farming Journal, example. So here, my paper might be rejected if my work was on synthetic organic fertilizer. Natural farming deals with natural organic fertilizer. My fertilizer is synthetic. That means it is not naturally produced. Even though it's organic, it will be rejected because it's not in the focus. Another example is the same study. Let's say I use organic waste, agricultural waste or whatever. All right. But my discussion is not based on the organic waste. It's based on chemical waste. Definitely my paper will be rejected. The next thing will be also, maybe we want to champion the cause of organic farming or natural farming. So when we look at your work and we see that it doesn't advance organic farming or the science of it, then we will have to just reject it. As simple as that, it's out of scope. Now, research ethics. Sometimes you do research, you might need approval. Example, if you do cancer research and you want feces from human beings or blood, you might need the consent of the patient or approval ethics. In our university, we have what you call an ethics committee. They will have to vet, or you are dealing with animals or all sensitive things. We will have to check on this. Or you have materials, nuclear, what do you call it, a nuclear reactor, all kind of things. And some work also, some researchers are just ambitious, all encompassing. They want to solve the problem of the world within a paper. That will be very, very ridiculous and it will be difficult. When you do this, it will be difficult to interpret your work. You will subject yourself to so many kind of flaws and a whole lot of questioning. So you don't have to be too ambitious, be straightforward and know what straight to the point. And when you have such a case or in such cases, it will be more appropriate, assuming you have multiple type of work or you are doing transboundary research or even your PhD work, you can break them down into chapters, into units. Then from there, you will start publishing or you start doing the research, component by component, but they are related. That is fine. This is why you see certain papers, they have part 1, part 2, part 3, or whatever. So it is acceptable. Sometimes your work is just too lengthy. Remember now, space is an issue. You get what I'm saying? So editors will not have time. They can scrutinize your work and then put it in that kind of length, time of whatever. So here you will need to redo your work. And normally lengthy papers, you will see that if it's not written, they have no focus and it's repetitive. So this is why you need to know what you are writing. Otherwise, there is outright rejection. Now, the language style also, the way you write. If you say your paper cannot be understood and it is difficult to read, definitely it will be rejected because you see, what is going to happen is no matter how good your research with, no matter how excellent it is, if you cannot communicate your work very well, you cannot leverage on the quality of your work, on the goodness of your work. What is the point if we cannot disseminate the information? This is why it happens when you have a very bad editing. What do we mean? Difficult to read, difficult to understand, repetitive. It requires rereads. We have to read many, many times before we understand. We don't have this kind of time. It's your responsibility and it's your work. And then paper also, here I'm talking about, the first one that I talk about is ethical issue relating to research. But here I'm talking about, now we have reached a level where people are not even maintaining the scholarship that we know. Some can go far beyond the scope, trying to bribe reviewers, trying to bribe editors, and then try to pretend like it is not your paper and you are reviewing your own paper. These are very, very unfortunate times and unfortunate situations. Don't do these things. This will land you into serious problems. And then also, paper can be rejected. When it happens like that, it's not based on ethical behavior. Therefore, you will get yourself out. Now here also, the topic is just not suitable. Remember that not every topic is good for any reputable journal. They have their own niche areas. That is why it's very important that you read the guidelines of the, what you call it, that kind of paper that you, a journal you want to publish in. It's very, very important. Then you see their what, their specifics. And then papers that will be outside the topic of the area of that journal. If they don't have interest in that, don't waste your time. Send it to where the interest is. Sometimes it's not because your paper is not good. It is not of their interest. So don't waste your time. Now, sometimes your paper is rejected because you use too much jargons. You see, jargons are control vocabularies, but that is not the way, because if it's, let's say, like a general type of journal, the jargons will be too much. So you need to reduce them. And then, of course, if you are writing in English, poor English will be later. I mean, in the subsequent talks, we'll be talking about this. Bad grammar, typos. How can you write a paper with so many typographical errors? You don't have affiliate, no list of authors, table, no text. Oh no, these kind of things will not go where. Even at the editorial office, you are already out. And then your tables and figures are not readable. References are incomplete. Oh, come on. So please avoid these kind of things. And then hard to read your work, difficult, all sorts of things. These are not the things that we need to go through. Now, one of the things that I think, especially the early career researchers, one thing that beats early career researchers is that they normally do not follow the writing style of the journal, the format. These are zealous, overzealous kind of individual. They just graduated, they feel they are great, they have their PhD, they never listen, and they don't want to learn. So when you do this thing, you are just wasting your time. Can you imagine even the style, the font size, margin space? You are not conforming to that. Who has time for you? So all these things that I've just said are all what we call editorial issues. Now, what about the technical issues? The first thing that I would like to share is your paper lacks proper overview of the issue. Can you imagine you are ignorant of COVID-19 and you write a paper and you want to publish? Definitely it will be rejected because you are not in tune with the situation. You get it? So you cannot advance knowledge, because I told you, you want to advance knowledge and apply the knowledge. So don't draw us back. So because of this, you have not taken your time to know and showcase what others have already done or what others are doing, and then what have been done in the field. Once you don't know this, it is suggesting that you might have, missed a lot of research work already. So we cannot believe your work. It means your review was not extensive and very comprehensive. And your paper also lacks originality because it lacks new findings, concept, mechanism, methods. They are not there. And normally, again, this is related to your poor literature review. It's very, very important. I have talked a lot about review of literature. Today, that is not the point. You may refer to some of my lectures. And then it's very, very unacceptable for the reviewers to draw your attention to papers or work that have already been done. That means you just didn't care and you are repeating what is known. That is a different thing. But sometimes, if your work is good, some reviewers might suggest certain readings for you for it to improve upon your work. I have gone through that, and I can say that that paper has been my best paper until today during my PhD level. So I'm not talking about you repeating until your mind is being drawn, your attention is being drawn. That is rejection. But maybe your work is good, but they are giving you other information to make it better. That's a different thing. That is positive. Now, you don't even have clear research questions. So if you don't have clear research questions, now what we do, it tells us that you can only focus on what you have done without telling us what you have achieved about the question. So you are wasting time telling us your work, but you are not answering the question. That is it. Now, this is why research question, if you are telling us what you achieve and you are not giving us the information as to what you have achieved and is vital and very interesting and it is useful for us, then forget about it. Now, this will lead you to being lack of focus. Because now here, when you lack focus, one of the things that we look for is, it could be that you are asking too many questions. You see, when you ask too many questions, you are tempted to answer all of them. And this will sway you from your focus and it will lead to turning down of your paper. Very, very important. 1 or 2 or 3 questions should be enough for a paper. Now, sometimes, like I said, if you have difficulty in understanding your problems and you cannot even write well, then it will be difficult for us to see your contribution and even understand your work. Therefore, a paper that presents a question and fails to answer that question, forget it. It will not be considered. Now, republishing, I have talked about this. Don't try to republish your findings again and again. Focus on originality. If not, get out of the thing. Nobody will publish it. And then lack of relevance is very, very important. Your audience don't have time. Too many things to read. We are only interested in your work. And the editors don't have enough space for you. So go to the relevancy of your work. And then global importance. Localized papers, I'm not saying they are not good. They are very good. But if you want to be recognized internationally, then your work must tailor and then find international journals that can disseminate your information and for everybody to benefit. Now, also, remember the editors, once they are not interested in country-based research or even regional-based research, they will reject your paper. I'm repeating again. And the paper also may be declined because no lesson is learned at all. So if we publish your paper internationally, we don't learn anything from it, then you are going to get out of the world, that kind of journal. Now, also, specific target can be international, it can be national, it can be regional. But what I'm saying is, just like the example that I gave you about the natural farming journal, the specific target is natural farming. Anything dealing with chemicals will be rejected. So that kind of audience will not be given. So those are the things. So you should know that if we are talking about this, then it is very, very important that your work must be only interested in the field for people to work it. Otherwise, forget it. And then the research findings are not appealing. Of course, if they are not appealing, this is where we have the problem. Remember, I'm repeating again, unclear hypothesis. If your hypothesis is not clear, then we also have a problem. Therefore, if your hypothesis is not scientifically valid, the way you ask your hypothesis is just like a simple kind of conversational talk. No, hypothesis is a premonition. It's a scientific guess that you need to what we call it predict. And then here also, you couldn't carry out extensive review. Therefore, you cannot formulate your hypothesis. You cannot construct a good research question. And sometimes the evidence to support your results are actually weak. Weak because your sample size does not represent your population, or you could not do extensive review. And sometimes also the negative control or control that you are trying to check is not there. Yesterday, like I was telling you, somebody was telling me that I asked, what is your control in this research? He said, my control is without fertilizer. Maybe you have wheat fertilizer without fertilizer. Wheat fertilizer cannot be a control because everybody knows that without fertilizer, you don't get good yield. So that cannot be a control. So that is a very weak kind of research. Now, you should rather look for existing control and see whether you can challenge that control. That is what we call positive control. Now, here also, wrong analysis, questionable statistical information. I have already given an example, so I will not go into that. Now, your methodology is not sound. There are better methodologies that could be used. And then we cannot draw conclusion from your work. And then here also, we are talking about, the robustness of your work is not there. And perhaps this is one of the major reasons why your work will be rejected, especially when your methodology is flawed. And then editors will also keep close eyes on your work, the approach of your question. This is why screening is very important for the validity of your work. And then here, it could be that you are just dealing with minor things. So if it's minor things about your research work that is not very serious, it could be accepted during revision. But if it's very substantial, then definitely you are out. And then the paper lacks a message. What is your take-home message? So that we will understand. Once we forget, we cannot really get your take-home message, then we will not be able to publish your work. So if possible, communicate your work properly. Give us the right information for us to get where your target is. If you don't do this, you will end up not concluding well. So your work becomes inconclusive. So there is no paper that will be published when the paper is inconclusive. Inconclusive means at least explain something for us to see that you have achieved something or you couldn't achieve something. It's okay. Give some reasons that you learned something from your work. And then maybe here, like I said, I think I have talked about this. So here, this is something that I think I need to highlight. Let's say you are doing a research. This research will take you 2 years. And then the first phase of the research is related to the second phase. So the first phase, you came out with very good data, and then you are going to publish it. If you think that the first results that you are getting will not deviate completely from the second part of your work, if you submit your paper, it will be accepted. However, if your preliminary research findings would deviate completely from the final findings, it will not be accepted. Because who wants to read something that is not final? So this is it. But if, let's say, your first preliminary results are very credible, they are well established, you can go ahead and publish it. We just published a paper 1 week ago. This was the issue that was raised. And we have to tell them the credibility of the work, and we got it through a Q1 journal. So that is how it is. So you need to know the difference. Right. Now, avoid invalid results. Once they are not valid, just forget about them. Mechanical errors will not send you anywhere. Right. Now, results that are valid, but you are not able to interpret them well, also can be rejected. So interpret your valid results very well so that you can discuss them in the context of your objective, hypothesis, questions, and conclusions. Now, remember, when you are talking about what we call it, resource interpretation, you need to demonstrate your technical know-how, in-depth knowledge of your work. This is where a number of work will be very, very weak. It's easy for you to describe your work, but it's not easy for you to discuss your work. So here, whether it's positive or negative, this is where you have to show your difference. Therefore, you need to be very critical in interpreting your work. It is very, very important. So here also, sometimes you must be in the position to really, really explain unexpected events, because sometimes it's also add on to your work, right? And then papers also can support future. Maybe it is out of unexpected, but you have reasons. Remember, future research can establish that area. You are paving another way for people to dive in, so long as your work is not flawed and it is technically sound, right? Now, violation, I have talked about them already, so I think I wouldn't go to this part. Now, reviewers, this review issue could be, example, sometimes you will have editors may overlook your work and send your work to reviewers that don't have much knowledge about your work, especially they didn't send it to a specialist. That sometimes can lead to rejection of your paper, but don't let it deter you. You may draw the attention of the editor, or you may send it to another paper, another journal. I think 2 months ago, we sent a paper, and then all what we saw was that there was rejection without any comments at all. We just said the paper is rejected, it hasn't met our requirements and whatever. So we write back to the editor and demanded that they should tell us exactly where are our flaws, because it's your right. And later on, we realized that actually the editorial office sent our paper to a different, they sent somebody's review, a response to us, rather not our paper. So sometimes when your paper is rejected or declined, it's very good that sometimes you need to find out what happened, unless you are told the details. Otherwise, it could be an oversight. So because your paper is being reviewed does not mean that you don't have the right to say something. You get it? If you are rebuting your work, you have the right. If you don't agree, you have to say it, but you need to justify your points. Now, journal standing and priority of the editor also counts. Sometimes certain journals, they have certain class of papers that they want and they are priority. So if you are not there, just forget it. So this is why high quality journals will only have a few kind of selections. Right. Now, here also, when you have reviewers, when they give you their comments and you turn down almost every aspect or you ignore every aspect, even though they are very good, I think that one outright rejection. Some could be good, agree. Some you need to provide explanations, go ahead and do that. But you cannot ignore because they have wasted a lot of time, especially the credible ones. So note that. And then remember this. There is a difference between giving rebuttal in a credible way and negotiating behind the screen for your paper to be published. If you negotiate behind the screen, that means that you are being unethical. That cannot be accepted. Now, when you talk about response, feedback, if possible, go point by point. If you say this part has been done, explain and then highlight in the text. That will make it easier for them to really, really appreciate your work. Now, never send any incomplete paper to anywhere in the world. It is not acceptable. We are looking for full paper, right from title to references. And then your presentation must have some good way of presenting. If not, major control in your flaws will come in. So it's very, very important that this is very clear to you. And then you must conform to order, just simple instructions. You must conform to them. Now your work cannot be repeated if you don't conform to those kind of whatever. Again, you will see that everywhere that I talk about, right from the conception into your methodology and into your results, statistics keep flowing. You get what I'm saying? So it's really important that you should know basic statistics, at least standard error, mean, range. You should know these kind of things. And then you should also check minor flaws and see whether you're labeling your tables, the content, the units, basic things like this, they must be there. Now, the other aspect will be the way you argue your way out. Remember just now I told you last week, we argue our way out that our preliminary results will be consistent with the final results. And we argue our way out and structure the paper in a way that it was accepted. It was a challenge, but you need to know exactly what you are doing. Now, flaws in your conclusion, especially when you have flaws in conclusion, you cannot justify your work. You cannot justify because the basis, the foundation, it was not well established, then just forget it, especially in the literature. And then it could be declined also because your work is just not contributing much. It is just an incremental. It's not extending knowledge, then forget about it. And the last part will be incremental kind of addition, like you okay, we know 1 + 1 is equal to 2. Or you say A plus B is equal to C. Then you change it to B plus A is equal to C. Actually, there is nothing new about it. It's not incremental and it's not very, very significant. So we are not looking for this kind of thing. And then the work, if you look at this also, it is very, very important that the articles that you are writing, if they don't have significant work and they are not contributing, please don't really waste your time on this. Now, for those of you who came a little bit late, I'm going to summarize my work now. So I'm just going to summarize them in terms of specifics, and then I will conclude. So here, if you talk about the review, this is the summary that I want to share with you. If your paper is rejected because it's an incomplete review, because it has not told us what has been done, what has not been done, and what you would like to do, and why. So the state of the art issue is not there. This is an example that I'll summarize for you in the literature. And then the literature also has no coherence. You don't have coherent kind of rationale. And then the next part will be, we are unable, if it's in the methodology part, I'm summarizing, we cannot repeat your work with certainty. We cannot reproduce your work in terms of error. So those are the things. Now, we also don't not sure with your experimental material and unit, your sample size is not adequate, and the basis for the variables that you measured is not strong. So those are the things. And then again, your treatment, the one you call independent variables are not properly described or properly taken. And then the problem of choice of control, I have explained, is not there. You don't have evidence of validity. And then the basis of using your method is weak. And then the poor choice of statistics. And then the statistical methods that you are using. You don't have experimental design, a very solid one. The choice of experimental design is also not there. Even if it's there, it's not solid. And then the results part, maybe you don't have sufficient data. Your data, your information is very confusing. You couldn't present your data very well, full of contradictory statements. And then the poor data presentation, even your tables and figures are not legible, they are not readable, they are not convincing, a lot of flaws. You even don't know what the difference between table and figures. Your statistical interpretations were flawed, no reliability, too technical in reporting that most people cannot understand. And then we are also talking about data interpretation, too much of speculation in your work. It tells us that you don't have much information to offer, no integration of facts, no much discussion of implications of your findings, because this will lead us to our take-home message. And then data also is not relevant to what is known and what is not known. Even what is known, you talk too much. Oh, my data is consistent with this. My data agree with this. My data agree with that. If you do that and you don't tell us something new, the contradiction part of your work, it means there is nothing new and you are not adding on to significant knowledge. And then the last part will be your style of writing. Your choice of words were not good. Grammar was poor, very unprofessional, using hyperboles, and then lack of economizing of your work. So these are the things. So ladies and gentlemen, when you come to the concluding part, there's no concluding part. And then you couldn't even conclude in relation to your objectives. That is really, really serious. And then not well stated objectives, you don't have them. Too general objective, not very specific. And then your hypothesis has no, sometimes your paper even has no hypothesis. Even if you have it, no, it's not convincing, poorly stated. And then research questions, you don't have research questions. Even if you have the research question, they are poorly stated or they are not there at all. Research problems, not properly identified and defined. Research problem is irrelevant and your research problem has not been solved when you finish your work. That could be very, very unfortunate. Now, what to remember after all these talk of noise, all that I'm saying is it is possible to publish your papers in reputable journals, provided on condition that you pay serious attention to the norms of scientific research and writing. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your kind attention. And then I go back to the chair and the organizers. Thank you very much.
Mashallah, thank you so much for thanks for sharing with us this important subject matter. We are grateful, Prof. I believe fellow participants have benefited immensely. For now, we will go to question and answer session. But before that, I would like to read the questions in the chat box. I think in the chat box we have 2 questions for Prof, and then one passionate request. Maybe I read that first. Please, Prof, we definitely need a lecture on statistics. So inshallah, I hope Prof will grant that request.
Yes.
Okay.
Should I respond, please?
Yeah, I can. That's the request for now.
Okay. I will definitely, like I said, we're going to run this as series. I will definitely come around. We will teach statistics, all the type of statistical methods. I have them in mind, so I will do that. Thank you very much.
Okay, welcome, Prof. The first question is on how can we judge the originality or relevance of a review paper?
Okay. Should I react?
Yes, please.
You see, for me, if you ask me how I check originality, is first, I will subject your paper to JCR. First, I will go to Science Citation Report, and then from there, I will check whether your work is published there or not. That is the first one. Number two, I have to familiarize myself with the subject area. Once you are in the subject area, you will know the direction of the research, and you will know how the research, the area had been building up. You get what I'm saying? So here, sometimes to check the originality of your work will also mean you need to check with authorities, those who are in the field. I give you example. There was a time one master student wanted to do something on fertilizers. I'm sorry, I use fertilizer. There is a fertilizer called urea. Normally, this fertilizer, the major problem with this fertilizer is gas. Those of you who know camphor, the one we put in our wardrobes, they will sublime. So the moment you put them in the field, within few minutes, they will just sublime and ammonia will be released. Now, this student wanted to come out with a technology to coat this fertilizer so that the nitrogen will be released slowly, so that the gas will be impeded. So he came to me, he read a number of literature. Sorry, I'm using myself to show you how we detect originality. So this student came and asked me whether he can use, let's say, material A. What I did tell him, because we've been doing a lot of work in that area, this gas that will be evolved is pH dependent. If the pH is very basic, meaning that the pH more than 7, any material that you use will rather aggravate the problem. So this student came to me thinking that he's going to do something original and told me that I'm going to use this material. So the first thing I told him was that if you go on with this research, you will not find anything new, but rather you will find negative results. Why? Because the material you are using, the pH is already basic. Therefore, if you use it, you are going to speed up the reaction. You get what I'm saying? Lo and behold, they didn't listen to me and they went and did it, and they got exactly the opposite what I said. So in that case, there was no originality because we are in the system, we know. So sometimes you have to ask those who know. This is why you cannot restrict yourself to only your colleagues. And if you are in the academic circle, you should know who is who in a particular area. So it all depends on your effort and the way you go out and search for the information, not only in literature, but people who are in the field. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof. The other question is on, they say, must you have hypothesis in every research?
This is an interesting question. I wouldn't know where the person is the perspective of the person, but for me, this is my personal view. I have never conducted a research without hypothesis. Because you see, if you are going to do, I'm talking about scientific research, and I'm talking about the sciences. I started by saying that you must have a curious mind, and then you must have intuition or premonition. So this intuition or premonition actually leads you to something. It's just like Why is it that everybody goes to, let's say like people are coming, walking to you, and you see that everybody is going to the right direction and not the left direction? And then now you want to research and find out why everybody is going right and not left. Probably there could be something, but that's something you are not sure. So in your mind already, you have a hypothesis, but whether you conceptualize it and put it on paper or not, that is a different issue. So my answer is, for me, I think a research without hypothesis is like a car without a driver. That is the way I look at it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Prof. Car without a driver. Okay.
But not that kind of Google type of car, not remote sense, remote control kind of car. Right.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, great. From the chat box again, it said, Prof, what is a good journal to publish a paper on, I think, IoT, that is Internet of Things?
IoT.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything related to science, anything, any scientific research or science in particular, apply or pure, I would advise you check what we call, a citation, journal citation report, especially Science Citation Index, and then Web of Science. In fact, as I'm telling you now, we at UPM, if you want to publish a paper and you want them to pay for you, the first thing we look for is Web of Science. You can go for Web of Science or you can go for Science Citation. But if you are in the social sciences, I'm not very sure, but I do know that you have what you call Social Science Citation Index. Perhaps you might go there. And then, of course, Scopus could be one of them. There are so many ways, credible databases, but I think the best that you can do is to go to Web of Science or JCR. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. Another question from the chat box. Please just to highlight, if you wish to ask, you can unmute yourself and then ask a question. Okay, the other question is, once paper has been rejected, what can we do further? Once the paper has been rejected, what can we do further?
Okay. I think if your paper is rejected, it's not the end of the world. Every individual goes through paper rejection. You have to just check, look at the comment of the reviewers. If the comments of the reviewers are very, very good, and you see, when a comment of a reviewer is good, you yourself, you will feel it. If you are told and it has nothing to do with, you have to go and repeat everything, then you could follow the comments and improve the paper and send it to another journal. There is nothing wrong with that. But if serious flaws or whatever are being pointed out, then I think it has been a waste of time, unfortunately. That is what I can say. And again, if the rejection was based on unprofessionalism, just ignore and then move on to another journal. Sometimes you get reviewers, they say, oh, this paper does not suit our journal, or we feel that it has no novelty or whatever. If they stop there, I think you don't have to worry. See what you can improve and then send it to another journal. For me, my strategy is like this. I go to the top journals and then get very good comments. If I try 1 or 2 times and it is not going up there, and then there is no way I have to repeat the research, and it's not because of flaw, but it's just a perception and opinion, then I go to another journal, but I scale it down a little bit. But I don't go beyond Q4 journals. So that is it. So don't fear rejection, depending on your paper. That is how you can go about it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Prof.
Okay. Doc, can I ask something?
Yes, please.
Okay. Thank you very much, Prof, for your presentation. My question is, I want to publish, let's say, a paper on one of my research objectives. Yes. But I want to find out whether I should wait to collect the original data for the work, let's say my PhD research, or I should collect a different data to work for the publication? So which one should I do?
Okay. You mean original data mean you generate your own data, right?
Yes. What I mean is, should the data I will collect for my thesis, should I use that data to do the analysis for the publication, or I should use the same research questionnaire to collect a different data that I will use for the publication?
I'm not sure why you want to do that in the first place. Before I answer your question, is there any reason? I'll come back to your question. Why do you want to do this?
Okay, that is why I'm asking, because
okay.
I want to I have different objectives, and each of the objectives I see that I can make publications from it. So
okay. Okay, I think there is no harm if you feel that you have maybe two objectives and one is related to your thesis and one is not related to your thesis. Is that what you are trying to say?
Yeah, all of them is related to my thesis and my variables. For example, I have variable A leading to a mediator and the independent variable, and variable B, let's say up to variable E, the independent variable leading to a mediator and what? The dependent variable. So I can see that, let's say if I pick independent variable A and the mediator and the dependent variable, I can write a paper on it and publish.
Okay, so why not you just go ahead and publish, and then when you are writing your thesis, you can plug some into your thesis and write your thesis. If I understood you correctly, let's say in our field, we do it like we have series of objectives and they are interrelated.
Okay.
You got what I'm saying? So like my students, maybe one is for laboratory research, one is for greenhouse, one is for the field. So if you're the laboratory research, we are doing screening. From there, we will go to the greenhouse, we publish.
Okay.
And then we move on to another part. Even the same laboratory research, we have branches, we publish. So I don't think there is anything wrong about this.
Yeah, my question was, should I use, let's say, the data that I'll report it in my thesis, should I use that data for the publication, or I collect a different data?
Oh,
for the publication?
I think, okay, very good. I mean, thank you for the clarification. Remember, I did say here, I did tell you that if, let's say, you publish your data already, all right?
Yeah.
If you have published as part of your thesis, the danger here will be, sorry, there is a background. Sorry, please, there is Dr. Mutaka.
India. Mutaka, mute everybody's mic.
Suleiman, is Suleiman, who's Prof, you can go ahead.
Prof.
Prof is mute. I think you can unmute him.
He needs to unmute. Prof, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay, so coming back to your question, for me, I think if you remember, I did tell you, yes, I mean, it depends on the way, but my fear for you is, if let's say you publish and it's part of your thesis, and now you cannot this time around take the whole content of your paper again and put it in your thesis. Exactly. Are you clear about this?
Yes.
You can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
So it is up to you whether you want a trade-off. But you have no, it is not wrong for you to take some aspect related to your objective and even support your thesis. It's not wrong, because I'm not sure about your university, When you are graduating also, you have to show papers published. In our system, you need to show in your thesis how many papers were published. But exactly. You cannot copy exactly into your thesis. There is nothing wrong about that.
Okay, Prof. Thank you very much, Prof.
Hello, Prof.
Yes. Okay, Dr. Hassan.
Hello, Prof.
Yes, please.
Sorry, allow me to take one question from the chat box. Then we come to.
Okay.
Yeah. There is a question on does new equal originality?
Okay. I mean, for me, I look at new. If you look me, I look at new as original. And new, actually, that is why I did say that the right word to use, not to confuse you, new and original, is to use the word non-obviousness. Non-obviousness means you thought out of the box, or you thought out of the ordinary, where among your peers, they themselves will have realized that, oh, we never thought about this idea. Oh, this thing existed and it never crossed our minds until you came in. That is what we mean by originality, at the same time non-obviousness. So that is the way I look at it. So when it is original and non-obvious, and then you come out and you are the originator, I'm not talking about nobody has ever done something. A big thing has been done, but a small part of it, you thought differently. Of course, it's new because nobody thought about it. So in that context, it's new. That's the way I look at it. But it can be new, it can be original, but we also have to see the impact. That is where your contribution should come in. So that for me, this is what guides me. Non-obviousness is the one that guides me to come out with my research work. Thank you very much. Dr. Mutaka, let me make this point clear. I'm not sure the first question, whether I was able to answer originality and relevance. Did I answer that question? Hello?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did I?
Somehow, maybe you can repeat.
Okay. All right. Again, let's go back to originality. Right. My understanding about something that is original. What do you think now if, let's say, somebody has produced a sugar from sugar cane, and then I went and produced sugar from, let's say, water? What do you think? Sorry? So now if somebody has produced a sugar from sugar cane,
the two are different,
and I produce sugar from water, am I original or not? Definitely in terms of sugar production, I'm not original. But in terms of innovation, novelty, using different materials, I have come out with a contribution. You got what I'm saying? So here you see that I have moved away from originality to non-obviousness. So when you use non-obviousness, it will tell you. Now originality also can be, now let's say example, the Wright brothers. They were the ones who thought and said that we need something that can fly into the sky. They are the pioneers. If it's a pioneering work, we can also say it's non-obvious, at the same time it's original. Just recently, we published a paper in a journal where we were the first group of researchers to do a research on organic soils growing papaya. So you see here, papaya grow on mineral soils, not organic soils. We are not saying that we are original, but in terms of pioneering work, then we will claim that newness. So this is non-obviousness. Now the relevance in terms of originality, if your work is really good, it must be relevant in terms of timeliness or its usefulness. Your work can be original, but in reality, it is not timely, so it is not relevant. COVID-19, anyone who will come out with a vaccine, the vaccine that you are producing, you are original, but in the region of producing vaccine, you are not new, but you are the one who came out with that kind of production. Maybe we are thinking of getting from maybe like human blood. You got it from something else. But the relevance here, how do you look at it? Is it really needed right now, or it will be needed tomorrow? So this is where all the relevance will come in. So for me, this is the way I look at it. Thank you very much.
Okay, back to a question from the floor before I take a question from the chat box. Dr. Qasim, I saw your hand up.
Now, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Thank you so much, Prof, for the wonderful presentation. My question is on excessive citation. During your presentation, I said my question has to do with excessive citation.
Excessive, yes. Okay.
Yes. So during your presentation, you mentioned that that is not necessary. So I have come across a situation where a component of the method that I used in my research is being challenged. For example, I used a particular method in assessing the diet quality of people, my research participants. During a presentation, one of the participants actually challenged that method and said that is not the best method to use. So in trying to prove that it is also a method that has been widely used, won't it be helpful to really cite a lot of research that have also used the same or similar method in assessing diet quality? Secondly, also, it has to do with the same method. For example, I measured blood pressure, and I indicated that I took 3 different measurements within a certain time interval, and then I took an average. So I made a presentation, and this one also, I was asked to get citations to support that. So, citing several papers, won't that help in this regard? Thank you.
Yes, that is a very, very good question. And perhaps, you see, what I was trying to say is, if let's say you are citing, now the first question you said that, different people, you wanted to show that they have used whatever. The point is, if you cite, let's say 10 from different angles, and I cite, let's say 3 or 4, and they all point to that level, and for instance, my citations are more close to the work, your 10 citations might not be relevant, but it doesn't mean that it's wrong. You get it? So citing, seriously, if you're really dealing with serious environment, let's say example, you cite 10 papers, and these 10 papers, maybe 3 or 4 are current. The rest 4 or 5 are old. So the logic that we use is, if you cite different people or whatever, what we assume is the current ones might have already referred to the old ones. Therefore, when you cite a few just to establish very credible references, there shouldn't be a problem at all. But if people want you to be citing more, then that is very subjective. You got what I'm saying? So there is nothing wrong about it at all. It's nothing wrong. And then number 2, example. Sorry? Hello?
Yeah,
Hello? Hello?
Okay.
Okay. May I add on to this?
Yes, please.
Just look at it. If you don't believe what I'm saying, try to write a paper and just make a statement and then cite about 10 or 15 papers for such a statement to support your point. Send it to a good journal, and believe me, if they don't come back to you and say that you are citing excessively, then I will be shocked. So definitely that is not the norm. However, if let's say you make certain serious points, maybe point A, point B, point C, point D in a sentence, and all of them may need some facts or reference to support. Maybe you have 4 points, and then you have maybe, let's say, like 10 or maybe 7 citations. Maybe the 2 is for the first one, 2 is for the second one, 3 is for the third one, 4 is for whatever. In that case, you will end up getting a lot of citations. That is something else. Or you are citing a paper, let's say like you are talking about blood, and then let's say like maybe the blood issue is region dependent or maybe race dependent. So here you are talking about maybe different type of races, or you are talking about different tribes, or you are talking about different regions. In that case, of course, your citation may be new and may be more. But if the fundamental conclusion is arriving at the same place, or that you are trying to show us is in diverse environment, this is the situation. Of course, in that relation, you will have more citations. I'm not denying that. But I'm talking about a situation where the fact is there, and 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 people have already established that, and it's also well known. Then I will just go for the current information instead of going back, unless I'm tracing history. If I'm tracing history, then I need to cite a little bit more so that to show the context. So it depends on the situation. So we cannot just generalize. Otherwise, you will see, I have been in so many environments where they will tell you, go and delete some of the citations. And another example is like this. When you say the literature is repleted with information, in that case, if you cite 1 or 2, it's not acceptable because of your language. You said it's repleted. So if it's repleted, we want to see more than 3 citations. That is a different way. So we need to understand the context within which we are talking. But I'm talking about if the point is clear and it is known, you don't need excessive citations. That's what I'm trying to say. Thank you very much.
Hello, Prof.
Thank you very much. Very clear.
Hello. Moderator, can I ask my question?
Yeah, go ahead, everyone.
Okay. Oh, thank you so much, Prof. I think, yeah, this citation is true. I've gotten a comment like that. They asked me to delete some of the citations because they said it's too much. Yeah. Prof, I wanted to find out about converting your work into a patent.
Yes.
Or is it possible that after publishing a paper, can you also write a patent on that?
I'm sorry, no.
Mm.
If you want another session, I will give you a whole lot on patent. Patent is quite sensitive. It's not only publishing. Even if you go for a conference, even if you do exhibition, it's already out. This is why you see when you go for certain exhibition, they tell you don't take pictures. You see, so the trick here is what you need to do is to quickly file. Let's say like you've got the results and they are exciting the original. For you to patent your whatever, they check 3 things: novelty, inventive step, and industrial application. So once you think you have that, quickly you need to file. Once you file, they will give you a number. So the moment you give the number has a date. Go ahead and publish your work. It's acceptable. There's no problem. But if you publish before, no.
Oh, okay.
Because they will do search, and they are very, very good in searching, and they can tell you all the places that you went. So that is how we do patenting. Thank you very much.
I think it would be very nice. Maybe later on, if you can have sessions on how to convert to patent and even conference and those things, and also book writing. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
Sure. It's just a step by step. Don't worry.
Yeah. I think that answers the question on what is the difference between paper writing and patent writing. I will leave it for perhaps another session. The other question is, can we replace hypotheses with research questions?
They are different things altogether. They are different things.
Okay.
We cannot replace them.
Okay.
Example. Let's say the one who talk about blood. Let's say I'm talking about maybe there is a microbe in the blood, and I came out with a certain formulation. And I think that my formulation will be able to, let's say, kill maybe the virus or the microbe in the blood. So my hypothesis is, that is my intuition, that this is what I think is going to happen. But the question that we will ask, you have to ask is, what will be the right dose? What will be the right quantity? You got what I'm saying? We don't know that. How long will it take to kill the microbe? We don't know this. You got what I'm saying? So you see here, my hypothesis is I will be able to kill the microbe using my formulation. But I don't know the quantity, I don't know the dose or whatever, the longevity. So this is where the research questions are and your hypothesis. So you see here, hypothesis is completely different from a research question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Prof, please, can I ask you a question on this? Chairman, please.
Okay.
Chairman, please, will you permit me to ask a follow-up question? Yes, thank you, Prof. I think what came to mind is whether you can decide to use one research questions or hypotheses. Will that be appropriate?
Personally speaking, I don't do this. So I will not be able to answer back, because for me, I believe they are two different things altogether.
Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
This is why when you write international, I'm sorry. If you even write international proposals or whatever, you will see the hypothesis column is completely different from research questions. So I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that. Thank you.
Okay. From the chat box, are free publication journals credible? How do we identify credible journal?
I think I've answered part of this part, but I think there are free journals that are free. I mean, they are credible. Example, there is one institute it's about Institute of Sustainable Agriculture based in Canada. It's free. I used to publish in certain journals called Sustainable Agriculture based in US. Free. You got what I'm saying? Because these kind of journals, they are sponsored by organizations, credible organizations. So the fact that the journal is not free, does not mean it has no quality. So it depends. Now, like I just told you, if you really want to check the quality and the credibility, those are the databases I have just mentioned. Citation report, Web of Science, Scopus, or whatever. But Scopus also, I have my reservation, because I have seen certain journals that are not credible that are listed in Scopus. Seriously. So for me, I rely more on citation, a science citation report, or JCR, or Web of Science. These are the credible data that so far no one has questioned them. So that is my advice to you. Otherwise, you could be cheated. I'm telling you the truth. Thank you.
Okay. The final question from the chat box on repeatability and reproducibility of methodology. Assuming I'm writing 2 papers from one thesis, how do I? Should I go on? Yeah. How do I avoid the two instances, because apparently it is the same sample size and sampling procedure?
I think what I meant by repeatability and reproducibility, I'm talking about the time that you are taking your data. You get what I'm saying? It's not after you have taken your data. Of course, you have analyzed. So during the data collection, if you didn't design your experiments very well, and then the experimental error is already high, and then when you repeat, you will not get similar results. So here my point is, during the conduct of your research, after you have collected the data and you cannot reproduce from 2 papers, that's not the issue. The issue is before you started collecting data, have you laid out the design to make sure that whatever you are doing will not flood? That is too late already. So let me clear myself. That's what I mean in the sciences. Is it clear?
Yes, please. Okay. I think that no more question in the chat box. So any question from the floor? Any comments, any question?
Hello.
Yes, doctor, please.
Of course, comment will definitely be to thank Prof for this opportunity. Yes, we pray that God will continue blessing his knowledge, and I will hope that where he is will also be able to reach one day. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
I think another hand is up. Bravo Bakar, no. Bravo Bakar there. Unmute yourself, please. I think no.
Hello? Hello?
Yes, please, doctor.
Dr. Butata, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you, Prof, for the wonderful presentation. Actually, we have learned a lot from this kind of good presentation from the Prof. My question, where I need more clarification, is regarding the issue of self-citation. Does that mean one is not required to cite himself in a work that he think he has also contributed in his subsequent work, or there is a limit to what one should limit to the in terms of the number of the citation one is expected to have in a particular paper that is written subsequently? That is the clarification I need. Thank you, Prof.
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. I think it's good that you are pointing out there's nothing wrong that you cannot cite your own paper. That's not what I meant. What I meant was that you cannot overdo it. Okay. You can't overdo it. You get it. Let's say 1 or 2 or 3 in a paper. You see what they do, I mean, it's good. 1 or 2 or 3, there's nothing wrong. I've been doing this. But if everything is referring to your paper, then it's not acceptable. And actually, you are not adding more credit to your work when you cite too much of yourself. What do you think? If I keep telling you about myself in this presentation, will you be happy? If I keep telling you anything I refer to myself, anything, how will you feel? So that's the way it is. Is it all right? Yes. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, doctor.
Thank you.
Any other question from the floor? While waiting for other questions, please, for those who wish to have a certificate for us to confirm attendance, please, before leaving.
I'm sorry, Dr. Mutaka.
Yes, please.
Please, I have just been alerted that I couldn't understand one question, and I am not able to answer the question very well. So to be fair to the audience, I think somebody clarified that the question is, how do we judge originality or relevance of a review paper? So I think this is one question that I'm told that I didn't understand the question, and I'm very grateful to the person who pointed it out. A review paper has its own place. You see, a review paper also adds on to knowledge, and normally a review paper should be critical, and then try to look at scenarios and see where research is going or issue is going, and you want to add on or to pave a way. So I think it's relevant. Example, now we have COVID-19, right? Now we don't understand it very well. So if somebody tried to trace the history of pandemic and then try to look at how viruses work and where did we come from, how did we get here, and predicting into the future, I think this is equally relevant and is very, very important. So it still can be considered original in terms of adding what you've already known and paving a direction. So in that case, a review paper also can be original only when we can gauge that you are contributing and not just to be just reading and describing somebody's work. If you read and describe and you are not critical and bringing your own thoughts and argue your way out, that is not a good review. It's just a documentation. So thank you very much. I hope this time around I've got the question right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof. Please do remember to confirm your attendance by writing your full names in the chat box. Most probably within the week, the certificate will be sent out to those who specifically requested for it. So if there's no other comment, then we'll invite Prof to perhaps round up for us.
What I can say is I would like to thank all of you for coming, and you are my source of inspiration. And mine is just to come down and then try to share what I have. I'm not trying to say that I know much, but maybe we could share. I have also learned some few things from all of you, and then keep up. So thank you very much. In case I made some comments that were not appropriate, I may seek your forgiveness, or if I have some errors here and there, just take it that I wanted to give you my best. And I'm not here to tell you that I know everything. I'm also learning. So thank you very much. And I would like to thank Dr. Mutaka, and then the Ghanaian Students Association President, and all the Ghanaian community, and all of you for your presence here. Thank you, and I can assure you that I have a number of series that we could go through, and so it's up to Dr. Mutaka and the group to be organizing. We will go through. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof. As mentioned earlier, this is the first part of the series. So God willing, we'll announce the date for the second part. And then just to provide some insight into the statistics of the attendance, registration, we have about 130. At the beginning of the session, we started with 22. Reaching Q&A session, we had 51. And at this closing time, we have 42. So hopefully next session we'll be able to have more of, let me see, active attendance, inshallah. Conversion of the registration into attendance, basically. Okay, thank you so much for those who have been able to make it. And we pray that whatever we have learned from Prof, may Allah reward him immensely and for us also to be able to benefit from it. Thank you so much. Here comes our session. Okay, have a blessed morning, afternoon, and evening, wherever you may be. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Huh? No.
List for the attendance, we have less than the names here, less than 41. Please, if you do need a certificate, kindly write your name.
What up, man? Tisha lembung mara to wireless Wi-Fi. For now, teach. Oh yeah.